I never thought I'd be the kind of man to end up in this sort of mess. At 52, I thought my life was pretty well mapped out, my days carefully stacked like the logs of the cabin I'd always wanted to build one day but never got around to. I had a good job, a comfortable home, and a marriage that had settled into that predictable rhythm most people call happy. But as I've learned, the line between comfort and boredom is thin, and sometimes one tiny slip can send you tumbling. I'm not even sure when it really started. Maybe it was that moment at the office when Linda's laugh caught my ear, clear and bright, cutting through the stale air of that Monday morning meeting. She was the new HR manager, all sparkling green eyes and a confidence that made me feel like I was seeing the sun after months of rain. I'd like to think it was innocent at first, just two people sharing a few laughs, talking about the sorry state of the coffee machine or how Jenkins and accounting always smelled like stale cigars. But the truth is, it wasn't innocent for long. Linda was different from anyone I'd ever met. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only man in the world when she looked at you. Her smile was a promise, and her touch, just a quick graze of her fingers on my arm, was enough to send shivers up my spine. I'd forgotten what that felt like. I'd forgotten that I could feel like that at all. My wife, Carol, and I had been married for almost 25 years. We'd raised two kids who'd grown up and moved out, and our evenings were usually spent in front of the TV, half watching some cooking show while scrolling through our phones. We didn't argue much anymore, didn't really talk much, either. It was safe, predictable, and utterly devoid of the spark I used to think was so important. I didn't plan to cheat. I swear to God I didn't. It started with coffee breaks that turned into long lunches. Linda and I would sit in this little diner near the office, some rundown place with cracked red vinyl booths and the best damn pie I've ever tasted. We'd talk about everything and nothing, her dog, my fishing trips, the kind of music we liked back in high school. She told me about her messy divorce, how her ex had taken off with some girl half his age, leaving her with a mortgage and a broken heart. I told her about Carol and how sometimes I felt like a ghost in my own home. One day, she put her hand over mine and said, "You're not invisible, you know." And just like that, something shifted in me. Maybe I wanted to believe it. Maybe I needed to. The first time it happened was on a rainy Wednesday. We'd stayed late at the office, finishing up some paperwork. The cleaning crew had already come and gone, and the only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Linda was wearing this red dress, nothing fancy, but it clung to her in a way that made my heart race. She was leaning over my shoulder, showing me something on her laptop, and then she turned her face toward mine and kissed me. It was soft at first, like she was testing me, and then it was hungry, like she'd been waiting for it as long as I had. My hands were in her hair before I could even think about what I was doing. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was a line you can't ever uncross. But God help me, I didn't stop. We ended up in the supply closet. Of all places, boxes of printer paper and old holiday decorations stacked around us. It wasn't romantic, but it felt alive. I hadn't felt that way in years. Her fingers were cold on my skin, and her breath was hot in my ear. When it was over, we both just stood there, catching our breath, the weight of what we'd done pressing in on us like the walls of that tiny room. After that, I thought I'd feel guilty, and I did at first. But the thing about guilt is that it fades, especially when the memory of her mouth on mine is fresh in my head every night. We started meeting in cheap motels during lunch hours, telling ourselves it was just a fling, something to shake the dust off our lives. I'd lie to Carol, saying I was working late or grabbing drinks with an old friend. She never questioned it. That was the worst part, how easy it was to lie. The affair was like a drug. I'd see her name pop up on my phone, and my pulse would quicken. I'd count the minutes until I could see her again, touch her again. But even as I drowned in those moments, a small part of me kept whispering that it wouldn't end well. Nothing this intense ever does. One night, after one of our secret meetings, I came home to find Carol in the kitchen, humming to herself as she chopped vegetables for dinner. She looked up at me with that soft smile she'd worn for decades, and for a second, I felt like the biggest bastard alive, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. Linda made me feel like I was 20 again, and I wasn't ready to let that go. I know how it sounds. I know how it must look to anyone else. But when you're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a lifeline. I told myself I'd end it. I even tried once or twice. But every time I saw Linda, every time her fingers brushed mine, I'd get pulled right back in. She was a fire I couldn't stay away from. even though I knew it was going to burn me alive. I tried to convince myself it was just a phase, something I'd get over, but Linda had become my escape, the spark I thought I'd lost years ago. Every time we were together, it felt like the rest of the world faded away. One rainy evening, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I can't keep doing this, Sam. It's not fair to either of us." My stomach twisted. She was right, of course, but the thought of losing her made it feel like I was suffocating. I went home that night and sat in the dark, listening to the rain beat against the windows. Carol was in bed, already asleep. I watched her breathe, wondering how I'd gotten so far from the man I'd promised to be. In the end, Linda ended it for both of us. She packed up her office a week later and left town without a word. My chest felt hollow, like she'd scooped something out of me and taken it with her. I thought I'd feel relief, but all I felt was the cold weight of everything I'd risked. I never told Carol. Some nights, I think about confessing, about coming clean, but then I see the quiet comfort in her eyes, the trust she still has in me, and I can't bring myself to shatter it. I still think about Linda sometimes, about the way her lips tasted like peppermint, or the way her laughter used to light up the office. I know it was wrong, and I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life, but I also know that for a while, she made me feel like I was alive again, and for better or worse, that's something I'll never forget.